The winter that year was harsher than anyone expected. The kind of cold that didn't just settle on rooftops or hide in alleyway shadows. It crept into the bones, into the breath, into the silent spaces of life that people rarely looked at twice. Snow fell so often that the streets stayed powdered white, and the wind carried with it a loneliness that seemed almost physical. In the middle of that freezing city, down a narrow alley between two old brick buildings, an elderly man sat in a wheelchair each morning. His clothes were worn and faded, his thick gray beard tangled, and his hands always tucked inside thin sleeves to keep warm. The world passed by him without a second glance. People assumed he was just another homeless person, invisible to the crowds, forgotten by fate, except for one little girl. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, humanity, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps spread more stories that touch hearts. Her name was Emily, a quiet 12-year-old who walked the same alley every day while going to her mother's small soup stand. Emily wasn't wealthy. Her family worked long hours just to scrape by, but her heart was rich in ways money could never measure. She first noticed the old man one early morning when the wind was sharp enough to sting skin, and the clouds were still heavy with the threat of more snow. His wheelchair was old and scratched, one wheel slightly bent, and he sat motionless, as if he were trying to blend into the cold surroundings. Emily had hesitated, unsure if he even wanted help, but when their eyes met, something inside her shifted. His eyes were quiet, but not empty. They held stories, pain, and perhaps a hope so faint it almost wasn't there. From that day onward, Emily brought him warm food every morning. She wrapped each bowl in a towel so it wouldn't lose heat quickly, and handed it to him with gentle hands covered by knitted gloves. She never asked questions, never demanded answers. She simply gave what she could, offering a moment of warmth in his otherwise frozen days. And the old man accepted the food, with the kind of gratitude one doesn't express through words but through the fragile, almost trembling way he held the bowl, as if it were something precious. Weeks passed, and Emily grew more attached to the routine. She began noticing things others overlooked. The man's posture suggested he was once someone proud, someone dignified. His hands, though aged, bore signs of once having held important responsibilities. His voice, when he thanked her, carried a tone too refined for someone who had supposedly lived their whole life on the streets. Emily often wondered what had brought him here, though she never asked. One quiet morning, when the sky was painted in pale blue and the streets were still empty, she arrived to find the man staring ahead with a faraway look. The steam from the soup curled upward, warming his face slightly, and for a moment it reminded her of those old movie scenes where a forgotten hero sits waiting for a miracle. Emily realized that the man wasn't just broken by poverty, he was carrying a sadness far deeper. She wished she could do more, but she was still just a child with limited means. Emily's mother noticed her growing attachment and gently warned her not to get too involved. Life was unpredictable, she said, and people weren't always what they seemed. But Emily couldn't turn away. In her heart, helping him wasn't a duty, it was instinct. Something about the old man pulled her close, like a silent plea disguised beneath layers of sorrow. As days turned into months, the cold began to loosen its grip. Snow melted into puddles, and little patches of earth began to show again. Emily continued her visits even as spring approached. She noticed the old man's health improving slightly. His cheeks carried a bit more color, and his frail hands no longer trembled as violently as before. He seemed to wait. For her now, his eyes searching down the alley until she appeared. Emily didn't realize it, but she had become the only light in his dark, collapsing world. The turning point arrived one breezy afternoon. Emily and her mother were closing the soup stand after a long day when a black luxury car slowly approached the alley entrance. Two well-dressed men stepped out, their eyes scanning the surroundings with intense seriousness. Emily watched curiously as they inspected the far end of the alley, then whispered to each other while glancing at a photograph. Her heart quickened, sensing something unusual. The next morning, when Emily arrived as always, she found the old man gone. His wheelchair was still there, but he wasn't. Panic shot through her. She looked around frantically, checking the corners, the buildings, the shadows. He had never been gone before. That alley was his world. Suddenly, a hand tapped her shoulder. One of the men from the previous day stood behind her, holding the same photograph of the old man. Emily's heart pounded. The man asked about him, not angrily, but with great urgency. Emily's young mind raced with confusion and fear. She explained that she only helped him with food, that she didn't know where he went. The two men exchanged looks of relief mixed with exhaustion. Then the truth came out, truth so wild, so unbelievable, that Emily thought she had misheard. The old man wasn't homeless. He wasn't just some forgotten figure surviving in the cold. He was Richard Callahan, one of the wealthiest businessmen in the country, a billionaire who had mysteriously disappeared 8 months earlier. His family had spent fortunes searching for him. They feared he had been kidnapped or worse, yet here he was, living like a ghost in the back alley of a common city street. Emily could hardly breathe. The men explained that Mr. Callahan had suffered a severe emotional breakdown following a tragic incident in his personal life. The loss of his only son had shattered him. He had gone missing soon afterward, leaving behind a world that expected perfection from him. He had slipped away into the night, choosing isolation over the suffocating expectations of wealth and status. His disappearance was a national mystery, but he survived quietly, unnoticed, thanks only to the kindness of a little girl. Emily was overwhelmed. She didn't know how to process everything. The old man she saw as lonely, fragile, forgotten, was a billionaire. She wondered what he felt all those days he sat alone, what memories haunted him, what he hid behind those soft, tired eyes. She wished she could talk to him again. Just as confusion swallowed her, the men revealed that Mr. Callahan had been taken to a hospital earlier that morning after collapsing from weakness. They thanked Emily, explaining that without her daily help, he might not have survived the winter. Emily broke into tears, feeling the weight of the situation crash upon her young heart. She had helped him because she cared, not because she expected anything in return. The next days were difficult for Emily. She went to the alley out of habit, even though she knew he wouldn't be there. Her mother comforted her but didn't fully understand the emotions spinning inside her. Emily felt a strange mix of pride, fear, sadness, and longing. She missed him, the quiet old man who had become part of her life. 3 weeks later, Emily and her mother received an unexpected visit at their soup stand. A clean, well-maintained wheelchair rolled toward them, but this time the man in it looked entirely different. His hair neatly trimmed, his clothes warm and elegant, and his face fuller and healthier. It was him, Richard Callahan, no longer a fragile shadow, but a man reborn from years of grief and despair. Emily ran to him, and though the world saw him as a billionaire, he looked at her the way a person looks at someone who saved their soul. He thanked her with a gratitude that couldn't fit into words. He explained that each bowl of soup, each moment of kindness, had reminded him that the world still had warmth left in it, that people, even the smallest ones, could carry extraordinary light. And then came the moment that shocked everyone. Mr. Callahan announced publicly that it wasn't wealth, power, or influence that brought him back to life. It was the compassion of a 12-year-old girl. He began funding shelters, food programs, and support projects across the city in her honor. He didn't do it to gain publicity. He did it because Emily had shown him what true humanity looked like. The city buzzed with the news. Reporters flooded the streets. People were stunned that a billionaire survived because of a little girl's daily kindness. Emily, who had never sought attention, suddenly became known everywhere as the girl with the kind heart who helped a man millions had forgotten. Before we continue, if this story has touched your heart so far, please like the video, share it, and subscribe to support more emotional stories like this. As weeks passed, Emily learned that true wealth wasn't measured by money, but by spirit. She saw the old man transform into someone determined to repay the world what he believed he owed. He often visited Emily and her family, sometimes quietly, sometimes with updates about new shelters or programs he had started. He always said the same thing, that she reminded him what humans were capable of when they chose love over judgment. Years later, Emily would still walk through that alley, now renovated, warm lights installed, and a plaque mounted on the wall. It read, "Kindness rescued me here." And every time she passed, she remembered the man who had once sat alone in the cold, invisible to a world too busy to notice. She remembered the lessons he taught her without ever intending to. That every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to rebuild lives. Before the ending, please comment below. What would you have done if you were Emily? Emily grew up, but she never forgot the old man whose hidden identity had shocked everyone. She carried the memory like a quiet flame inside her. A reminder that the world changed not through grand gestures, but through simple acts of humanity. Acts powerful enough to revive a broken billionaire and to inspire millions who heard their story. And so, the tale of a little girl and an old man became more than a story. It became a testament to the truth that kindness can find people in their darkest places and guide them back into the light.